soul just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall again.
All right, welcome to episode number 15. Lonnie Jones, this is my life story, and every now and then in there what God's done for me, because he's done a lot for me, but he just comes out of nowhere sometimes and does something for me. And if I don't necessarily mention him, what he's done for me in an episode, that doesn't mean he hadn't done something for me. Sometimes it's not a great big thing he's done that I really want to say I know for sure he did it for me, but he's always there and always has helped me. But this is episode 15, and that we're going to let you know some more about my life story here. And I believe I left off where I'd quit Avco. I had quit Avco, and it was a union shop, and I couldn't stand it no longer. And I don't have anything against unions. I don't have anything against people that's in unions, because they have to have them. They don't have to have them. Whatever they want to do. It's just something I don't want to be in. It's something I don't want to be in. I don't want to be regulated. I want to be regulated by me. I want to work. If I'm getting paid to work, that's what I want to do. That's the way I've always been, and that's the way it is. And you may hear a little bit about that in this episode here with my father-in-law, because I do what I say I'll do when I say I'll do it, and that's the way I live. Always have and always will. But I'm working for Mr. Farris. I quit Avco in the union. I've gone to work for Mr. Farris, Farris Machine and Tool Company, and he has got a shop on Webster Street. When you turn on Webster Street off of Gallatin Road, you go past his water department's on the left as you go down now, and you cross a little bridge. Well, everything across that bridge turned out to be Mr. Farris's, because he ended up buying it. But when we first went down there, another man owned it, and it was a little 2-car garage around behind the building that he rented from the man with his little machine shop. And I told you what little different machines he had. Well, Mr. Farris put me on the lathe, and the first thing I made on the lathe, I can only describe to you what it looked like. It was a piece of round aluminum, had threads on one end, had a hole through the middle of it. It was beveled and had a place for a gasket on one end of it. Well, it turned out that went into a rocket that was going to go into space for DuPont. We were making that for DuPont. They were making a cooling unit to go on this rocket. It was going to send something in. I don't remember what it was sent into space, but this fit in that mechanism that cooled, air conditioned something about the engine, whatever it was. But anyway, that's the first thing I had to make on a little old lathe, not much longer than this table. This table, I think the lathe was probably 36 inches, and this is probably about 30. But anyway, it was a very small lathe, and I had to chase those threads. Now they'll die to run up on the thing. I actually chased them on a lathe, and most of you have no clue to what chasing threads are on a lathe. I'm not doing it now with a die that's already made, got threads in it, and you run it over the front of it. I had done it with a tool. I did it with a tool on a lathe. Well, that was one of the first jobs I ever done. Well, I'd done that job. I'd done it real well for Mr. Farris, and I worked for Mr. Farris. I also became his welder. I was his first welder that was welding. And as he grew, he done more for Avco and more for DuPont. Well, Avco, 90% of everything we did for Avco were jigs and fixtures, and was being made out of aluminum. And we would have to, I had to learn to weld aluminum, and I learned to weld, of course I learned to weld steel without too much of a problem. And we were using stick welders. Back then we didn't have the wire welders, the MIG welders like you see today. We had, I think it was like 250 amp Lincoln welders. That's what we was using. And I would have to preheat that aluminum in an oven. Now, welding aluminum was different than welding steel. Let me get separated here. The stick welder that we were using was for steel. Okay. Now we had what they call a TIG welder that used gas, and a little rod comes out the end of it, and you used a pedal, and you had a rod in your left hand, and that's what you welded aluminum with. Was a TIG welder. You welded it with aluminum. But we would have to preheat the aluminum in an oven. And I was the one at that time. He had done got quite a bit bigger by then, and had actually added on. He had actually the two car garages. He had made that into the welding department, and he had expanded and added on to the building by this point. And it didn't take him too long, because things were booming back in the 60s. Things were really big, going big, strong in the 60s. And let me explain something that they should do today that they don't. That they don't do that we were doing back then. Back then, a lot of the young guys would come in to the machine shop, but they would have, like Maplewood had a machine shop. A lot of the high school had machine shops. What the government did, they had a deal with the government where the government would pay, after they stayed at school half a day and worked in the machine shop a half a day at school, they would come and the government would pay the salary for the rest of the half a day to the guys that was coming from school out there to be trained. We would train them, and the government would pay us to train them in the machine shop. They'd work in the machine shop in high school. They'd come to our machine shop or other machine shops for that matter, and the government would pay the machine shop to train them how to weld, how to run a lathe, milling machine, or whatever. So that's what they need to be doing today, and I think we'd have a lot higher quality people out there and making a lot more money than they're probably making today, because I don't think they do that today. I'm not sure about that, but that's how they did back then. So anyway, we got he had added on to the shop and everything, and we were doing really good, and I became I was the person he got me started welding. So I welded steel, and then I got to welding the aluminum with the TIG, and I never forget, I was welding aluminum, a big job for Alco, and we had these blocks, they were about 4 or 5 inches square and about 3 inches thick, and it was T6 aluminum. Now see, there's a lot of different numbers on aluminum, but aircraft aluminum is T6. It's a hard aluminum. But that's I can't tell you. I don't remember the names on a lot of the other aluminum, but T6 aluminum was aircraft aluminum, and it was then, and it is today. And that's what I was welding on. So I had 4 big blocks, and I had put them in the oven to preheat them. And by preheating them, the welding rod would all stick a lot easier. It was a lot easier to do, and it would just melt and flow right into the groove, and you couldn't pry it apart. But you had to preheat it. So I had 4 blocks in the oven, and it would come time to go home, and I forgot and left those 4 blocks in the oven, and that wasn't good. That I made mistakes. I've never made no grave, big, bad mistake that I can ever think of. It was really bad. That wasn't all that bad, but it was. But it was 4 pretty expensive pieces of aluminum. And the next morning when I come in, I realized what I had done, and I opened that up, and those things I went to touch them, and they just melted. They weren't worth a dime for nothing. So needless to say, that was a mistake that I definitely do remember, and didn't make a lot of mistakes, but that was one I didn't need to make. So that was one of the mistakes I that I remember making that I should never have made, but I just totally forgot and left them in the oven overnight, and then the next morning they just disintegrated, just melted. Next morning when I opened up the oven, so Mr. Farris didn't get mad about it. I don't even know where he chewed me out or didn't. I don't remember. I don't think he did. But at any rate, that was a biggest mistake that I can ever remember making in the tool and die, and most especially in the welding end of it. So anyway, those weren't any good. So we had to cut new ones, and I had to, of course, redo it all over again. I have actually shed tears because of making a mistake and having to do something over. I hate to do something over. Got to do it right the first time. Doing things over is no fun, and it's just something I can't understand. So, anyway, during the time this was going on, there was a big company up in Springfield, Tennessee, called Unarco. A company called Unarco, and they made metal racks that went into big companies such as Ford Glass Plant, DuPont. They were stackable, and we built these dies that punched these holes out in them, where you run up there and stick it in there and pull it down and click in, and you could put a ton on top of them. Wouldn't hurt them at all. But he acquired this, building this big die. Or there's several dies involved, and they also had machines up there that rolled the metal. It would come in a flat piece. It'd go into one roller, go into another roller, and go into another roller, like that, and it would form itself into a tube with an opening on one side. And we built the dies on those. I didn't build the dies on those. A fellow by the name of Harold Johnson pretty much built the dies on that particular die that knocked out the holes in the uprights for the steel beams that went up and down, and to make the racks. But now we were making parts for another big machine down there. It was be a huge conveyor belt. Now Unarco was about 4 stories in the air. Well, guess who had to go up in the top of the ceiling and do all the welding? Little old me. So, and it's in August, and about 95 outside, and about 110 up in that ceiling. And I'm up there welding these tracks on where all these things got to run on, and they can't fall off either. They can't fall off. Well, so I'm up there in Unarco, and we're welding. I'm up there for at least a month. Me and another guy's up there for about a month, and he was more or less my helper, getting these things up to me for me to weld up there and so forth. Well, here, lo and behold, I do make another mistake. I don't make a mistake welding. I don't make a mistake with the company, but what I did do is I back and forgot how crooked people are, how people lie, how people steal. I'm still not grown up to this fact yet that there's not liars and thieves out there. So here we got all these grinders and these drill motors and stuff up there. Instead of me putting them in the truck and bring them back to the shop with me with us that night, I leave them in a pile out there because I'm going to use them the next morning. Well, lo and behold, I get up there next morning because they've been stolen. They have a night shift over there of their own doing something else, and they stole all of my tools. I forgot about being in the carnival. See? I'm going to tell you something more about that carnival in a minute, too. I'm going to back up and tell you a little bit more about that carnival, because since we're talking about liars and thieves, somebody stole all my tools. Well, it's my fault. I left them up there, but I didn't have to pay for them. I'm sure I think I got a good chilling, and I deserve it. But I'm not thinking that nobody's going to steal my stuff laying there. Are you kidding? Nobody would do nothing like that. I just left the carnival. They didn't do nothing like that. They wouldn't steal a teddy bear from you. They wouldn't steal your money. I'd forgotten all about that. See, that's so far back in my past, I done forgot about that. So anyway, they stole my tools. Now we're gonna cut off right here where I'm welding up in here on this big converter. We're gonna come off, back off right there, and let me back up and tell you a little bit about that carnival that I have not told you about. I quit the carnival. We'll get back to the welding in a minute and all that good stuff. But I gotta tell you this here. Before I'd never have nothing else to do with that carnival whatsoever, because the guy crooked me, cheated me out of everything. Well, he tried to get me to go back out on the road, and I done told you that the next year, and I wouldn't do it. Well, he goes back out. Well, that year goes by. Well, he get ready to go out. The third year, he getting ready to go out again. He ain't got nobody to drive one of his trucks for him. Well, little old me, he comes to me and, will you drive my truck to Hazard, Kentucky for me? So I'll pay you. Well, right there was a lie. When he said I'll pay you, I knew that was a lie right off the bat. But I'm just don't know about me. I'm working at Alco, by the way. And this is when I'm working at Alco. So he talked me into driving that truck and pulling that trailer to Hazard, Kentucky. And the reason I'm telling you this is because it has to do with stealing them tools, liars and thieves. And the carnival was my first lesson, and I didn't learn nothing. Well, what do you think about that? Didn't learn a thing. Because here I am, guy had beat me out of thousands of dollars, wouldn't pay me nothing. Here I am, heading towards Knoxville, Tennessee, driving an old beat-up truck, pulling an old trailer, about to fall apart any time. And in the back of my mind, and I'm taking two days off at Avco, where I'd have made $300 because it's on the weekend. I'd have made $300. Here I am going with this guy. Hadn't learned a thing. In my mind, I wasn't going to get paid, but I went anyway. Now, what kind of a deal is that? Well, let me tell you, there's a little mountain or a little road goes through a place called Cumberland Gap. It goes out of Tennessee above Knoxville over into Kentucky, called the Cumberland Gap. Have you ever heard the Cumberland Gap played on the banjo? That mountain looks just like that. Back then, they did not have a 4-lane road up the Cumberland Gap mountain out of Knoxville over into Kentucky. So we go along and it gets dusky, dark, and we get about halfway up a hill, and you look back and see the back end of the trailer. If roads are just like this right there, roads are just like that right there. They're crooked. It's just like that right there. Well, it was an old Dodge truck. Sorry about that, Dodge. I'm sure the rest of them's all right. But that one, particular one, quit right in the middle of that road and halfway up that mountain, and it dusky dark. But I'm a drag racer. I still ain't learned nothing. I'm drag racing. I'm working at Avco making good money, so I'm drag racing. Drag racing is just a ridiculous thing ever was. That's just another money pit. But there's a lot I didn't learn when I was growing up, or thought I was growing up. So anyway, knowing rebuilding rear ends and rebuilding heads and rebuilding motors and everything, I knew a little bit about. I was mechanically inclined. Back to the mechanically inclined from way back yonder. Well, I get out and it won't run. We know it ain't. We're pretty sure it's not gasoline. So back in those days, you got a distributor cap. Underneath that distributor cap is a set of points and a little coil, a little condenser. So I pull that off. I look at the, and now it's dusky dark. And he got a little old flashlight about that long, and you barely could see. I looked over in there, and the points were stuck together. Well, have you got any tools? No, I ain't got no tools. I mean to tell you, not even a screwdriver. And it takes a screwdriver to loosen the points back in those days. You all know what I'm talking about. Most of you watching as old as I am anyway, so you know what I'm talking about. But we got a fingernail file, and it's metal. That thing is made out of metal. It's about that wide, about that long. Fingernail file in his wife's pocketbook. I want you to know, if you think God ain't with you, you're really, really wrong. I take that fingernail file and I get that screw loose. And I file, with that file, I file those points. And I reset those points to where I think it's going to run. And God said, let her run, and she ran. We went over that hill, went over that mountain, coming Gap Mountain. We went over that road. I reset those points, tightened them down with nothing but a nail file. We got into Hazard, Kentucky about 10 o'clock at night. Well, guess where I slept? In the front seat of that truck. What do you think? Same old Carnival I was on 3 years before. I'm sleeping in that old car, and it is in Hazard, Kentucky. If you've never been there, the sun don't shine where you can see it till about 12 o'clock, and that's because you get down in between two mountains, and the sun don't come up or go down on either side for just a little while. It's almost like living in Alaska. It's just daylight for a little while, or it's daylight for a long time, whichever. Up there, anyway, I'm down in between these mountains up there. So we get there, okay. So next day, the bus. Now this is a Greyhound, boy. This is a Greyhound. I'm gonna ride back home. I'm gonna catch one of them streamliners, Jack. We coming right back to Nashville in a hurry. But we're not going to leave till 6 o'clock tonight. So how about helping me put these joints up, Lonnie? Here we got 16 joints I done put up hundreds of times before. Here I am putting these joints back up again that I had tore down in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, for nothing. Here I am putting these joints back up. Well, 6 o'clock comes, he drives me over to the bus station. Guess what he gives me? $20 bill and a bus ticket to Nashville, Tennessee. And I would just lost $300 by taking off from Avco to drive him to Hazard, Kentucky. Now that's the good part of the story. The next part is I sat there from 6 o'clock at the bus station from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, waiting on the bus to come into Knoxville. When he comes in at 8 o'clock and we all load up, we go about 3 miles off the interstate we go. Go down there and pick up somebody, get it back on the interstate. We go about 20 or 30 more miles off the interstate we go. All the way to Knoxville, this bus is stopping. We get into Knoxville from Hazard, Kentucky at about 12:30. And it wasn't but an hour and a half if you're going to drove it. So we get in there, and now I'm waiting again. Here I am waiting on another bus till 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm waiting 2 more hours. I got $20, old boy. I got 20 big dollars. We on the bus at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we arrived back in Nashville, Tennessee at 9:30. It took us from 2 o'clock in the morning till 9:30 to get to Nashville, Tennessee. We stopped everywhere there was any place to stop. That bus stopped. I swore I would never get on another Greyhound bus. And I'm swearing to you today on the Bob, please don't make me get on another Greyhound bus. Nothing wrong with Greyhound buses if you're not in a hurry. I arrive on, we're talking about it, we arrive back on, not Sunday morning, I'm back Monday morning, and I got to go to work 3 o'clock in the evening because I'm working night shift. See, I'm working night shift at Avco. So it's Monday morning we get back into Nashville, 9:30. Now I live on Broadmoor Avenue over here off of right there by Maplewood, Broadmoor. I live on Broadmoor. I got to Broadmoor. I got there at 9:30 that morning, and I had left. And I had left Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, going to Hazard, Kentucky. Saturday morning, 7 o'clock. I got back home 9:30 Monday morning, and I got $20 in my pocket. Oh, I'm loaded. Lost 300 at least. If I lost a dime. I want to go back and tell you that because he was a liar and a thief when he hired me to work for the carnival the first time. I hadn't learned a lesson. I hadn't learned nothing from him. I left my tools laying on that floor on a job where I was working. I still didn't know people were liars and thieves. Well, I believe that one sunk in. At that point when I lost those tools there, all this stuff come back to me of what I had forgot. I forgot they were thieves because I was married into a wonderful family. Farrises was wonderful people, do anything to work for you. Some of the greatest people I've ever met. They were wonderful people. You got what was coming to you, whatever it may have been, in any kind of way. And here I am, still have forgot that we got all these crooks and thieves out there, and I lost a bunch of the man's tools. I imagine if we had to buy those tools today, I probably lost $500 worth of tools. Then they would have probably been about $200, $250. But now they'd probably be $500. And the reason I'm telling you this is one of the ones that I lost was a half-inch drill motor. It took 2 handles to hold it. And there's a little story behind that. I was drilling a hole. I was drilling a 3/4 hole in a beam in the top of that building on a ladder. And I don't know how many, most all you people know exactly how powerful a half-inch drill motor is that has a handle on both sides. How powerful they are. Well, when that drill went through there and hung, it just spun me plumb off the ladder, and only God I was able to hang on and get back on that ladder before it fell. Well, needless to say, you know, I was careful at that point. But that drill bit grabbed, and it spun me plumb around, spun me back on the ladder. So I just wanted, I had to go back and tell you the little thing about the carnival because I lost all those tools from Mr. Farris. And I had forgot that there were liars and thieves in the world, and this was a long time before this happened, but I had forgot. But I'm going to end there, and I'm still at UNARCO working on putting the conveyor belt in, but there's a little bit more to tell about that, and then of course we're still doing some work for ALCO and so forth and so on, so we'll get that on number 16, I believe. We're on 15 now, episode 15, and God's still hanging there with me. Lord, he's making it rough on me riding them Greyhound buses, though. I don't know why I let him forgive him for that or not. I'm going to work on that. I got to still work on that, good Lord. But that Greyhound bus wore me out, let me tell you. But that fingernail file, that was a strong fingernail file. Right now we're going to play a little music, and we're going to call this episode a good one. We hope you've enjoyed this part of it and learned a little bit about what I'm doing. Up to my first year. This is about, I guess I've been married close to 3 years at this time. But at any rate, we're going to close here on number 15, and we're going to pick and grin a couple songs for you, and we'll see you on episode 16, okay? Thank you. See you on 16. I just want to tell you about our church, our Friendship Missionary Baptist Church at 101 Flat Ridge Road in Goodsville, Tennessee. We're there every Sunday morning from 11 to 12 o'clock. We'd like to see you in church. We'd love to sit down and jaw a little bit with you. So come to see us in church on Sunday if you can from 11 to 12 o'clock. 101 Flat Ridge Road, Goodsville, Tennessee. Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. Thank you. Let's pick, you want to? Let's sing one. All right, now we're going to start out with a thing called I'm using my Bible for a road map. I'm using my Bible for a road map. The 10 Commandments tell me what to do. The 12 disciples are my road sign, and Jesus will take us safely through. There'll be no detour in heaven, no rough roads along the way. I'm using my Bible for a road map. My last stop is heaven some sweet day. I'm using my Bible for a road map. The children of Israel used it too. They crossed the Red Sea of destruction, for God was there to see them through. There'll be no detour in heaven, no rough roads along the way. I'm using my Bible for a road map. My last stop is heaven some sweet day. There'll be no detour in heaven, no rough road along the way. I'm using my Bible for a road map. My last stop is heaven some sweet day. My last stop is heaven some sweet day. I'm using my Bible for a road map. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to do a song called "Don't You Want to Go There" in the key of B.
Change it.
In key of B?
Yep.
Where are we going? Gibby.
To heaven.
Okay.
Now, Gary Adams, he learned this today, didn't he?
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard it, so.
Well, you fixing to, huh? There we go.
Don't you wanna sing with the angel band? Don't you hear him call?
soul just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall